Happy birthday, sweetheart. A split second later, his hand flew across my face, and the impact slammed me violently against the ballroom wall. The entire hall gasped. The music stopped. My rich, arrogant husband stood over me, looking triumphant, expecting me to break down in tears and beg for mercy in front of the city's entire high society. But instead of crying, I wiped the smudge from my cheek, looked him dead in the eye, and began to laugh. A cold, ringing laugh that turned his lawyer's face completely pale. Everyone in that room froze, paralyzed by fear and confusion. They thought they were witnessing my public humiliation. What my husband didn't realize was that by putting his hands on me tonight, he didn't destroy me. He had just blindly signed away his freedom, his millions, and his entire future. My name is Clara, and on the night of my 26th birthday, I finally realized that the most dangerous place in the world is right next to a man who thinks he owns you. To the rest of the city, my life looked like a flawless fairy tale. I was married to Julian Vance, a brilliant, charismatic real estate tycoon whose name was synonymous with power, luxury, and success. People envied me. They saw the designer dresses, the diamond necklaces, and I was the happiest woman alive. But behind closed doors, that beautiful mansion was nothing more than a golden cage, and Julian was a meticulous warden. Over our 3 years of marriage, he had masterfully transformed me from an independent woman into a background prop for his public image. He controlled what I wore, who I spoke to, and how I smiled for the cameras. He used a patronizing, velvet-toned voice to constantly remind me that without his wealth and status, I was nothing. I had learned to navigate his cold, calculating moods, but the air was shifting. Tonight was my 26th birthday gala, an extravagant event Julian had organized at the grandest ballroom in the city. But I knew the truth. This party wasn't a celebration of my life. It was a carefully staged theatrical production designed to impress his ultra-wealthy investors, local political allies, and his fiercely loyal corporate lawyer, Arthur. As I stood in front of the mirror fixing my dress, I could feel the suffocating weight of the storm that was about to break. The cracks in my perfect life actually began 48 hours before the gala, on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. Julian had rushed out of the house for an emergency board meeting, leaving his private home office unlocked, a rare mistake for a man so obsessively meticulous. I had been looking for our family passport folder to confirm a travel date, but as I searched through his heavy mahogany desk, my fingers brushed against a hidden latch underneath the central drawer. With a soft click, a concealed compartment popped open, revealing an encrypted laptop left logged in and a thick, unlabeled manila folder. Curiosity quickly turned into a cold, paralyzing dread as I began to read the documents inside. Julian wasn't just a demanding husband. He was a criminal. The financial statements and printed wire transfers laid out a massive, complex corporate fraud scheme. For the past year, Julian's newest real estate projects had been hemorrhaging millions of dollars. To cover up his failure and keep the banks from foreclosing on his empire, he had been systematically embezzling funds from my personal family trust, the inheritance my late parents had left behind to ensure my safety. But the final document in the folder was the real knife to my heart. It was a secret legal contract drawn up by his lawyer, Arthur, titled Reputation Protection Protocol. The fine print was horrifyingly clear. It stated that if I ever caused a public scandal, filed for an adversarial divorce, or publicly humiliated Julian in a way that damaged his corporate reputation, my entire remaining trust fund would be legally forfeited directly to him. He was planning to trap me, destroy my name, and strip me of everything I had left. Sitting on the floor of Julian's office with the devastating evidence spread out around me, the initial panic faded, replaced by a cold, burning rage. Julian believed I was completely blind to his financial games. He thought I was too weak, too uneducated in the ways of corporate law to ever look beneath the surface. He was counting on my obedience. But after 3 years of surviving in his shadow, I had learned exactly how his mind worked, and I knew that trying to confront him directly would only give him time to destroy the evidence and lock me away forever. Instead of crying, I took clear, high-definition photographs of every single document, every wire transfer, and every fraudulent signature, carefully placing the originals back into the hidden compartment exactly as I had found them. Within an hour, I contacted Marcus Vance, Julian's estranged uncle and a legendary forensic accountant who had been pushed out of the family firm years ago, along with a top-tier private corporate investigator. For the next 36 hours, while Julian was out celebrating his impending business deals, we worked through the night to build an absolute airtight countertrap. Marcus drafted a brilliant, highly complex set of revised corporate transfer papers. We seamlessly hid these specific pages deep inside a thick stack of standard gala event permits and vendor contracts that Julian routinely signed without reading before any major public event. We embedded a critical emergency clause into the text. If Julian were to commit a public act of malice or bring legal harm to immediately transfer to my name. The trap was set. All I needed now was for Julian to play his part. The night of the gala arrived, and the grand ballroom was a dazzling spectacle of crystal chandeliers, flowing champagne, and whispers of high-stakes business deals. Julian moved through the crowd like a king surveying his court, holding a glass of expensive scotch and laughing with the city's elite. His lawyer, Arthur, stayed glued to his side, the two of them exchanging subtle, triumphant nods whenever they looked my way. I played the part of the submissive, adoring wife flawlessly, wearing the heavy diamond necklace Julian had bought to show off his wealth, and smiling warmly for every camera flash. But beneath my calm exterior, my pulse was racing. Earlier that evening, right before the guests arrived, I had handed Julian the thick stack of gala paperwork, casually telling him the venue required his signature immediately. Just as I predicted, his blinding arrogance tripped him up. He scribbled his name on every page without reading a single word, completely blind to the corporate trap nestled inside the text. Now, the trap was fully set, and the momentum was building toward the grand finale. At precisely 9 o'clock, Julian took the microphone and called me up to the stage for my big birthday announcement. The music stopped, and hundreds of investors and politicians turned to watch us. As I stepped onto the stage, Julian's warm public smile instantly vanished, replaced by a dark, mocking sneer. He leaned down, pretending to give me a kiss, and whispered, "Happy birthday, sweetheart." A split second later, he faked a look of sudden outrage, swung his hand across my face, and the aggressive impact slammed me heavily against the decorated ballroom wall. The heavy impact of his hand echoed through the grand ballroom, followed by a wave of collective shock. A suffocating silence fell over the crowd as hundreds of elite guests watched me slide down the decorated wall. Julian stood over me, his chest heaving, his face perfectly twisted into a mask of righteous anger. He was deliberately staging the narrative, preparing to claim to his investors that I had whispered a threat to destroy his company. He expected me to break down, to sob helplessly on the floor, and play the role of the ruined, unstable wife he had so carefully scripted. But as Julian took a step back, waiting for my tears to validate his victory, the strangest thing happened. I didn't cry. Instead, I slowly stood up, brushed the dust off my designer dress, and looked him dead in the eye. A slow smile spread across my face, and then I began to laugh. It was a cold, ringing laugh that echoed off the high ceilings, shattering the tense silence of the room. Julian's confident smirk completely vanished, replaced by a flicker of pure confusion. He looked around the frozen room, realizing the crowd wasn't looking at me with pity. They were looking at him with absolute horror. I reached into the neckline of my dress and pulled out a tiny, glowing blue light. It was a state-of-the-art covert recording device, streaming the entire evening live to a secured cloud server. Every word, every mocking sneer, and his unprovoked physical assault had just been broadcast directly to the federal authorities and his entire board of directors. Julian took a step back, his eyes darting frantically between the glowing blue light of the recording device and the stunned faces of his primary investors. Sensing the immediate collapse of their entire plan, Arthur, his fiercely loyal lawyer, stepped forward in a desperate bid to regain control of the room. He clutched his leather briefcase tightly against his chest, attempting to use his commanding legal voice to salvage the situation. "Clara, you are making a massive mistake," Arthur threatened, stepping onto the stage and pointing a trembling finger at me. "This public disturbance, violates the reputation protection protocol you signed. Your family trust fund is officially forfeited to Julian." Instead of flinching, I reached into the folder on the podium and pulled out the thick stack of gala paperwork Julian had signed just 2 hours earlier. I slid the documents across the polished table directly into Arthur's hands. "I think you should read page 14 very carefully, Arthur," I said, my voice smooth and perfectly calm. The room remained dead silent as the lawyer adjusted his glasses and began to read the fine print. Within seconds, the color completely drained from his face, leaving him looking ghost white and entirely paralyzed. The emergency clause we had embedded was undeniably binding. By signing those pages in his hurried arrogance, combined with the live-streamed physical assault that proved malicious intent, Julian had legally triggered a corporate default. He hadn't just protected himself. He had blindly signed an immediate transfer that stripped him of his CEO status and signed over 100% of total federal asset seizure. By the time the police arrived at the ballroom, Julian's empire had already turned to dust. He was led away in handcuffs, facing immediate federal charges for embezzlement, corporate fraud, and assault, while his pale lawyer could only watch in silence. 3 months later, I officially liquidized his failing real estate projects and assumed full control of the Vance empire. Today, I am no longer a captive in a golden cage. I am a completely independent woman running a multi-million-dollar business on my own terms. Now, I am incredibly curious about everyone listening to my story tonight. What would you have done if you found yourself in my place? Would you have had the courage to play and see exactly how far my victory has reached? Meanwhile, I am leaving 2 other highly surprised. Click on them right now and I will see you there.